Hey everybody, it's Jason Blah here, and now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And a number of people have asked me, hey Jason, could you go check out Alpha M's ridiculous chest workout on bodybuilding.com? So I went to check it out. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Now, I'm not even going to get into the tricep part because I didn't even get that far. I just watched the chest aspects of the video. Now, I want to state up front, because this comes up every time, people are like, Jason, why do you tell us all the time you're not a bodybuilder? Because people don't seem to realize that I'm not a bodybuilder. They come in and say, why is this guy giving advice on bodybuilding? I'm not giving advice on bodybuilding. And Aaron's not a bodybuilder anymore either. He doesn't compete, therefore he is not a bodybuilder. Just because you're building muscle, and I can't see that he's built muscle since he was a bodybuilder. He's not bigger. So he hasn't built muscle since he quit competing, and he doesn't compete anymore. I'm not interested in bodybuilding. I think it's ridiculous. I'm interested in gaining muscle because muscle improves health, improves fitness, improves strength, improves performance, right? Muscle's a good thing. Now, what I want to talk about, though, with this, people are also going to come in who might be new to my channel, new to whatever's going on. They'll be like, well, he looks fine to me. I want to look like him. I want to have his size. Okay. His leanness is a result of diet. So you need to understand what you mean is you want to have a modest amount of muscle mass and you want to be really lean. That's what you mean when you say you want to look like him. You don't have to do the amount of training he did. If you're trying to not maximize muscle growth, you don't need to spend that much time in the gym. You don't need to come in and do 10 sets or 15 sets for a muscle group every single week if you are not trying to get as big as humanly possible. So a lot of what he's having people do is just a waste of time. And I'll jump into some of the exercises, but quite frankly, for most guys out there, if you're only trying to gain, 70, 80, 90% of the muscle you ever want to gain, like that you could possibly gain, you're not trying to gain 100% of what you're trying to do. You just say, hey, I just want my chest to grow pretty quick. Bench press with a pause. Weighted dips, standing overhead press. That's the only 3 lifts you're ever going to need if you're just trying to get to 90% of your possible size, right? That's it. If you're not saying, I want to be massive, because Alpha Elm is not massive. He's not big. This is not a guy who's really focused on maximum size, and it's very obvious, and that's okay. Not everyone wants to reach maximum jackitude. But that also means that you need less training, right? Because weightlifting, lifting weights, training, we do for the purpose of building muscle. It doesn't shape muscles. It doesn't necessarily burn much body fat other than your metabolic rate going up from having more muscle. All it does is make you bigger or not. That's all you're doing with the muscles. You're making them bigger. So if you don't want to get that big, you don't need to train that much. But people are going to laugh at that because we say that because what most people think of as too big would require them to spend $20,000 a year on drugs. So we'll let people figure that out on their own over time. But the point is, the amount of exercises, the exercise selection you get is ludicrous even if you're trying to maximize size. Absolutely ludicrous. You do not need 11 different exercises. All right, the chest and the triceps are not that complicated of muscles. Right, they're not the latissimus dorsi. They're not the back. You need maybe 2 different exercises for each of those muscles to maximize size, which means like 4 total exercises. And that's assuming, we're not getting overlap between the compounds. And actually, the reality is you do. What I thought was really the most ridiculous things, though, was that he gets to his second exercise, right? After doing push-ups, and he's talking about full range of motion and a stretch and contraction, right, of how important full range of motion is. I agree, full range of motion is pretty important for maximizing muscle growth, absolutely. Decent amount of data on that. Now, that can mean effective range of motion. It doesn't mean always the terminal range of motion for a joint. But we could be dealing with effective range of motion. He makes such a big deal about it on these isolation movements. But when he does his compounds, he does all partials, right? What? He does these push-ups first. He has people doing push-ups first. Well, I don't know, man. Why don't you do a bench press or a dip first? Why don't you do your big exercises first? Because, of course, he says, well, strength doesn't matter. Yeah, strength does matter. Study after study after study after study has shown that size and strength are directly correlated when drugs do not go in the mix relative to height. In other words, a shorter guy is going to be stronger for his size than a taller guy, but the taller guy obviously is going to have more total potential because he's going to have more room for muscle in his frame. Size and strength have like a 90% overlap. until steroids and site enhancement and other stuff come into the mix. All right, that is pretty well accepted in the sports science world. The data is pretty overwhelming, studying all sorts of athletes and bodybuilders and powerlifters and everyone else. You cannot separate size and strength. So when you say stuff like weight doesn't matter, and I get what he's saying, he's trying to tell guys to use good form. Don't cheat the weight up. Don't use partials, but he does partials. Like, that's the biggest thing that I would tell guys when they go too heavy. It usually means because you're trimming range of motion down, or you're bouncing a weight off your chest on a bench press. You're not pausing, right? Because you're using too much weight. But he does partials, so that doesn't matter. He just threw it all out the window. He's doing partials anyways. He does these push-ups with partials. He's not going all the way down, and he's not locking at the top. But then he goes on to and the push-up is already a crappy enough exercise. Just get under a barbell. Dips, bench press, do a big movement. All right, do a big movement. This silly bullshit doesn't need to be in there. Then he gets to these flies, and he's all worried about the stretch and contraction while doing partials and other stuff. And here's the thing I would say to guys: why do you feel the need to isolate your chest? I can understand that people will say, look, the fly is the only way to get adduction, and you have to do it on a machine or a cable. Even the dumbbells won't give you adduction of the pectorals. But like we discussed in the video with Jeff Cavalier the other day, he pointed all that out. The bench press is still a better chest builder. It's superior. The cables maybe for when you need adduction of the pectorals. But how many guys out there really their chest is lagging so much that they need that? In other words, if you're doing a fly, you're basically saying, I don't want to train my triceps. So someone who needs bigger triceps shouldn't be wasting their time doing flies. And the reason I say that is because you could be doing a weighted dip, you could be doing a heavy bench press, you could be building your triceps and your chest at the same time. The fly doesn't do anything magical other than maybe give you some adduction of the pecs. But that's not how you build the foundation of your chest. That's some fine-tuning stuff for someone whose arms have gotten so massive and their pecs are lagging behind due to their genetic structure that you have some guy who's got like 18-inch arms and then their chest doesn't stick out like this. It's like flat, because they have a really small rib cage, and maybe they have very few muscle fibers relative to their arms. They're genetically blessed in their arms, and their chest sucks. That's the person who might need to do flies. For 99% of you out there, you don't need to do this. It's not beneficial. If you're not happy with the size of your triceps, then you need to be doing presses for your chest, because you need everything to grow. You need everything to grow. You're tiny. You're still small. If you have multiple small muscles, you don't need to be isolating stuff like that. There's no point in it. There's no benefit. All you're doing is slowing down your muscle growth, because that fly is not going to make your chest grow faster than a bench press will. It's not if you're benching correctly. So he's already promoting all this silly fluff before he gets to any real exercises. And then the worst part, what happens when he gets to the bench press? He doesn't know how to perform basic exercises. It's scary. What's he do? He's got his feet up on the bench and he doesn't touch his chest. Now, a lot of people would say, well, he's removing a leg drive. He's removing leg drive. That's why we have the floor press. Like, you've got to wonder, does this guy know anything about training? This is why people need to stay away from silly-ass bodybuilders. They don't ever seem to know even the most basic concepts of training. How do you remove leg drive on the bench press? You do the floor press. And for some people, the floor press is a partial. They can't touch your chest. I can touch my chest on a floor press. You guys see me do it all the time. Some guys, they're still too small to touch their chest on floor press. Well, that's fine. He's not touching his chest on this either. He's essentially trying to replicate a floor press on a bench press. Well, that's dangerous. You have no stability. You need your feet dug in so that you can get stability. Putting your feet up on the bench makes you wobbly. You're creating a less stable platform. You're going to have a higher chance of hurting yourself, falling off the bench. You're going to have a higher chance of tearing a pec. You're going to have a higher chance of damaging a rotator cuff, because you're in an unstable environment to where one side, if something goes wrong, you're going to tilt to the side. You're putting yourself in an environment for risk of injury with no benefit. The purpose of using a bench is so that you can get leg drive, because your legs dig into the floor. That's why we do a bench. That's how a bench is performed. We use leg drive in powerlifting. If you want to remove leg drive, you just do it on the floor. You do a floor press. You lay on your back on the floor, drop a towel down if you're scared about the nasty germs on the floor. You do a floor press. You do it over at a rack. It's far safer, and then you can also get to a dead stop, which kind of comes to the other point. He's skipping touching his chest. That's how you tear a pec in the long term, guys. I've discussed that ad nauseum, that partials on the bench press where you don't touch your chest causes the highest rate of pec tears. That's how you tear a pec later. Furthermore, pausing on the chest and getting that deeper stretch activates more chest out of the bottom. If you're trying to make your chest as big as possible, why are you skipping the last inch of the range of motion that has the most potential to put stretch on the pecs, has the most potential to recruit maximal muscle fibers in the chest from the pause, because you have to use your chest to get it started? Why would you remove that from the exercise? This is the same guy who was talking about everything from stretch and range of motion, but when he gets to the bench press, he throws all that out the window. He gets to the most effective exercise in his entire routine. He gets to the most effective exercise in his entire routine, and everything he said early in the video just goes out the window. It just goes out the window, and then he does a silly ass, dangerous ass, unsafe version of the exercise. I mean, what a piece of shit video. Complete nonsense. Guys, if you're trying to get your chest to grow, bench press correctly with a pause, full range of motion, do weighted dips, do the standing barbell press. Right? Your chest will grow. It will grow tremendously. And you add, by added benefit, those 3 exercises work your triceps also. You'll get pretty big triceps too. How simple is that? Focus on progressive overload, getting stronger on those 3 lifts with good form and through an effective range of motion, and your chest and your triceps will grow. For 99% of you guys out there listening, that's all you will ever need. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.